Bible worm, reading the Bible with Bible worm.
Welcome to Bible Worm, getting to the core of the biblical text. I'm Dr. Robert Williamson, professor of religious studies at Hendrix College and theologian in residence of Canvas Community in Little Rock, Arkansas.
And I'm Dr. Amy Robertson, Director of Lifelong Learning and Music at Congregation Or Hadash in Sandy Springs, Georgia. We're here every week to discuss the biblical text, both as biblical scholars and as people of faith, one Jewish, one Christian.
This week, we're reading the story of Hannah as told in 1 Samuel 1, 1-20 and 2, 1-10. Really, we're supposed to be talking about Hannah's song in chapter 2, but we find the story of Hannah herself so compelling that we linger over it to see what it can teach us. We ponder the way that Hannah prays out of her wretchedness, speaking her truth before God in ways that may at first seem overly bold. But God's response to her prayer teaches us that God can handle our truths just as God receives hers. We also linger over the responses of Hannah's husband Elkanah and the priest Eli, who don't really understand what Hannah is going through, but who, each in his own way, tries to support her. And we wrestle with Hannah's song, which depicts the inversion of society and reminds us that God is the one who is in charge, no matter how much we might try to imagine otherwise. Thanks for joining us. Hey, Amy, it's Bible Worm time.
It sure is.
What's happening in your world?
What's happening in my world? Nothing. Nothing's happening in my world. I read an article recently. It's not a new article, but it just sort of came across my path recently that was in the Times a while ago about something called butt death, and I'm obsessed with it.
Oh, really? That's a real thing?
It's a real thing.
Oh.
It's like if you...
What does that mean?
It means like your butt muscles sort of stop activating. They get too relaxed when you're sitting.
Lordy.
And then even when you stand up, your body forgets to use them and uses like your quads or some other, combination of smaller muscles to do the same work. So here's the way you heal butt death. You ready?
I am so not ready.
When you stand up, you're supposed to like flick against your butt with your finger to like wake it up. Like,
hey, I do that with my kid.
Hey guys.
Can I just do one butt or have to do both butts?
I mean, it depends on your situation.
That is amazing.
Are you sorry you asked me what's new in my world?
I'm a little bit sorry, but also I'm a little bit fascinated. And also I'm a little bit concerned that my butt might be dead and I don't even know it.
Yeah.
Like, would you know if your butt was dead?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm flicking that guy every morning, every time I stand up. People are going to be like, Bobby.
For the Bible scholar. We spend too much time sitting.
Do people think it's weird if you, like, every time you stand up, you flick your own butt? Like, I feel like that's...
Maybe that'll become the new thing you do, like the new health and wellness practice.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's my Amy's exciting life.
When I said, how are things in your world, this is not where I was expecting us to go.
No. Mm-mm. That's just the first thing I thought of.
Well, Amy, I don't know how to connect that to the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1. I think it might be better to just let it be what it is.
And Selah. And we move on.
Yeah. Selah. Do you have a theory about that's in the Psalms, right?
Yeah.
Where between the stanzas or something of the Psalms. Do you have a theory about what that is? I've always wondered.
The people in my Torah study group that is reading through the whole book of Psalms right now are well convinced that it means basically strike up the band, like time for a musical interlude.
Oh, yeah.
I always just think of it sort of as like a pause, like, which could have music after it to really emphasize that like that thing is done and we're going to do something else now. But they sometimes will read it as strike up the band.
like when they're reading the Psalms.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The Psalm. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, some teacher of mine, it was probably, if it wasn't John Hayes, which you would remember, it must have been Walter Brueggemann, said that's what the band leader said whenever he broke a string. So he'd be playing along and he'd be like, Selah.
That's funny.
It's funnier in my head than it is now that it's out in the world. But anyway, all right. So Amy, today we're in the story of Hannah in the beginning of 1 Samuel chapter 1 and 2. The narrative lectionary actually just has us doing a couple verses in chapter 1 and then lingering over her poem at the beginning of chapter 2.
Mm-hmm.
We are going not to do that. We're going to read most of the story of Hannah in 1 Samuel 1. We're going to read 1 to 20 and then move over into the poem 2, 1 to 10.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is a couplefold. The first reason is because there's not a lot of women in the Hebrew Bible. There's not a lot of women's stories that we get to read together. And so it seems a shame to have this lovely story and only just gesture towards the narrative. So that's one reason.
Mm-hmm.
The less kind of thoughtful reason is I just don't really know what to say about 1 Samuel chapter 2. Like I got a couple things, like, but I just don't know how to spend a whole... I couldn't preach that sermon, I don't think. I can't talk about it on the podcast. I just don't know what to say about it.
I don't know what it says about us, Bobby, that both of us are so much more drawn to the narrative, the fuller story of Hannah, which includes the fulfillment of her prayer, but also all of the leading up to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that says about us, but I feel that way also.
Well, good. I'm glad we both feel the same way. And I hope our listeners feel the same way, or at least, here we are. Nothing you can do about it now. So that's what we're doing. One reason that I think they linger in chapter 2 is because when the birth of Jesus is announced to Mary in the Gospel of Luke, which is our gospel this year, she sings a song called the Magnificat that sounds a lot like Hannah's song.
I see.
And so in that way that sometimes our Hebrew scriptures are trying to anticipate what's coming in the gospel, I think that may be the connection. Yeah. So it's nice when we get to that text in a few months.
Can remember this text.
We'll say, hey, remember Hannah sang a song like that. So we'll talk about that, but we also will. Now every time I say the word but, I think about butt death.
I've ruined you.
I didn't mean we'll talk about that, but I meant we'll talk about that. But first we're going to read chapter 1.
Yeah.
You have ruined me for today, Amy.
Sorry.
Also, are we allowed to say but? I guess
my work
we are.
here is done. I mean...
Apple Podcasts made us sign a thing that said we wouldn't use profanity, but but's not profanity.
I don't think it's profanity.
In my house, we say booty.
Oh. That's okay. That's fair.
Or boot sometimes.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Now, there was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite from the highlands of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah.
Bobby?
Yeah.
Sorry. Do you want me to give any, what has happened?
Yeah, that would be better, but I just thought it was funny to start reading the text after saying the word boot. But if we're going to be good scholars who prepare people well, we should probably do that. All right.
Fine.
What do you think we should talk about?
So, there are ways in which I feel like you could read this text almost not knowing any of the context around it, and it will cohere as a narrative in that way. So I'm going to be brief in my comments, but I do think that they add some helpful fleshing out to me. Yeah. So when we were back in Exodus, the Israelites were just embarking on this journey through the desert. And during that time of the desert, it is not an easy time for them in the desert by any means.
No. Yeah.
They fight with each other all the time. They complain all the time. God gets upset with them all the time. They get upset with God. It's not an easy time. And one might think that once they entered the land that had been promised to them, things would get easier.
Yeah.
But in fact, they just kind of get differently hard. So we go through the Torah, and then at the end of the book of Deuteronomy, Moses, who has been their leader, dies, and they pass over into the land of Canaan, and they have all these, battles to be able to be in this land. And what I really want to raise up are two challenges that come from being in this land and no longer being sort of nomads in the desert. One is that they are not as obviously dependent on God and the day-to-day way that they were before. Like before, they were getting manna every day. That's how they ate.
Yeah.
Like they would pray for water. I mean, if you're in the desert, you don't just know where the water place is and go to get it because you're moving around all the time. Like you really are keenly aware of your dependence. So I think moving into the land, in some ways, people could easily get a sort of overinflated sense of control or power or independence and not be as attuned to the way that's really
helpful.
God is playing into things. Another question that I guess is sort of related to that is there becomes this ongoing question of who is going to be their leader and how are they going to organize themselves? And more pointedly, should they have a king? And the Israelite people sort of keep saying that they want a king like all the other nations. God has been saying, I am your king. You are not like the other nations.
Right.
Stop trying to be like the other nations and let me be your king. By the end of the book before this, the book of Judges, things are really bad. The people are really coming apart at the seams. There's a lot of violence. There is no commitment to the dignity and well-being of the other people around you. And it seems to be relatively clear to the reader that this system of not having a human head of things is not working.
Right.
So we come into the book of Samuel in that kind of mess of a state. And this story doesn't refer directly to that, but I think there are some threads that we might pull out sort of.
That's really lovely, Amy. You know, as you were talking about the book of Judges, like in the Protestant ordering of the canon, you get the book of Ruth inserted between Judges and Samuel.
Oh.
But in the Jewish canon, of course, we go straight from Judges into Samuel. And when you read it that way, that the end of the book of Judges is really brutally violent, especially toward women who are being killed and dismembered and kidnapped. And that refrain you were talking about is something like, there was no king in Israel and the people did what was right in their own eyes.
That's right.
So that's the very end of Judges, the last verse of Judges. And then in the Jewish canon, our story picks up in the very next verse.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's interesting. I really appreciate your setting the stage that way. So we've been living narratively through a period in which Israel has been ruled by judges, is kind of where we are. By next week, we're going to have King David getting an eternal covenant. And this is sort of the moment sort of in between those two. All right, Amy. Well, I'm going to pick up then in 1 Samuel chapter 1. I am reading in the Common English Bible. Now there was a certain man from Ramathaim, a Zuphite from the highlands of Ephraim, whose name was Elkanah. He was from the tribe of Ephraim, and he was the son of Jeroham, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph. Elkanah had 2 wives, one named Hannah and the other named Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah didn't. Every year this man would leave his town to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heavenly forces in Shiloh, where Eli's 2 sons, Hophni and Phinehas, were the Lord's priests. Whenever he sacrificed, Elkanah would give parts of the sacrifice to his wife Peninnah and to all her sons and daughters. But he would give only one part of it to Hannah, though he loved her, because the Lord had kept her from conceiving. And because the Lord had kept Hannah from conceiving, her rival would make fun of her mercilessly just to bother her. So that is what took place year after year. Whenever Hannah went to the Lord's house, Peninnah would make fun of her. Then she would cry and wouldn't eat anything. "Hannah, why are you crying?" her husband Elkanah would say to her. "Why won't you eat? Why are you so sad? Aren't I worth more to you than 10 sons?" All right, Amy. So I just want to start with this relationship between Hannah and Peninnah. We've seen this before. We haven't read it this year, but in the Hebrew Bible, there are these stories that we get throughout this part of the canon about women married to the same man, and they often have this kind of antagonistic relationship. Can you just talk a little bit about Hannah and Peninnah and how you understand their dynamic?
It's interesting because as I was talking about what a hot mess things are, at least in the order of the books in the Jewish canon, when we arrive at this moment, one thing that some Jewish commentators have pointed out is that in some ways it feels like we're going back to Genesis, because this story of two wives and the favored wife being barren is familiar to us. I mean, it's the story of Sarah and Hagar. Hagar is not described exactly as the wife of Abraham, but as we know, that is functionally what it was. Yeah. And then also Leah and Rachel. And in both situations, there is a beloved wife, and she is barren, and the other wife is able to bear children, and that causes quite a lot of tension between them.
If you try to get yourself into Peninnah's head about why, like, there's all kinds of ways one could respond to having your husband's other wife or your companion not being able to conceive. There's lots of ways one could respond. She responds by sort of poking fun.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about you is that you are always being compassionate for the people who come across poorly in the story.
People who look like jerks in the story.
So I'm wondering if you were trying to read Peninnah compassionately. Do you have a way of doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I have two different possible ways to understand Peninnah that are floating through my head. One of them is, we were just speaking pretty recently about the Joseph story and how love unequally distributed within a family seems to pretty directly inspire hatred from the unloved, less loved, not unloved, the less loved person. Yes. And so I can't let go of the fact that it's not just that Peninnah had children and Hannah didn't. It's also that Hannah was more loved by their shared husband.
Yes.
So I wonder how that sort of plays into things.
Yeah.
I also saw that a Jewish commentator named Rashi actually gives Peninnah a very positive read. And he suggests that Peninnah is basically warding Hannah, like irritating her, to press her into the kind of desperation that leads to her prayer.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And it is the prayer that solves the problem.
That's Rashi?
That's Rashi.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that is a really positive read of Peninnah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to wrestle with that one a little bit.
No, you gotta work a little harder to hold on to that one.
Because then the sermon that comes out of that one is if you have a friend who's stuck in a rut, just make fun of them until they get so desperate that they pray.
I mean,
don't preach that one.
No, don't.
There's probably Rashi had a better sermon in his head, I'm sure, than that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be something of a tough love kind of angle to try to go at it. But I don't know. At least the idea that Peninnah is herself hurting and is acting through hurt as all of us humans tend to do softens her a little bit to me. But she does seem, that's just mean, man. Why are you doing that?
Yeah, I hear ya. The connection that you were making to the Joseph story, where we were talking about love unequally distributed leads to animosity, that's where my head also went. And I don't quite know yet what to do with that bridge across these two stories, but it's in this sort of narrative lectionary cycle, it seems so clearly there.
Yeah.
There's a line in here in verse 5. I tripped over it when we edited it out, but I tripped over it when I was reading because the CEB in verse 5. So Elkanah gives food to Peninnah and all her kids. So there's lots of food going to that side of the family. Verse 5, he would give only one part of it to Hannah, though he loved her, because the Lord had kept her from conceiving. What does the NJPS have in verse 5?
But to Hannah he would give one portion only, though Hannah was his favorite, for the Lord had closed her womb.
So the difference there, so it's very clear in your translation that she's the favorite. in the CEB, it's though he loved her. So it's saying he does love her.
Mm-hmm.
It's not as clear that she's favorite. Although in my mind, favorite wife is the way to read this because that's the way the story has unfolded in previous iterations.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Well, can you just talk to me about what you think that means? Like, why is there only one portion? Is it?
I mean, I think I really am thinking of this in a pretty simple-minded way that you take portions of food from the sacrificial offering to feed the people who are there, and if each person gets a portion of food. And so if you are a person who has come with 2 children, you get a portion for each 3 portions for 3 people. And Hannah, it's just such a pointed and sort of, I don't know, practical way in my mind to point out that like Hannah's just Hannah.
Yeah.
And so it's not that her husband was trying to slight her. It's just as much as he loves her, she is one person.
Yeah.
And everyone sort of gets their one portion, which does, in some ways, I feel like soften the idea of her being the favorite. Like she is the favorite, but he's not. It's not like the story of the ornamented tunic where the husband is clearly treating her differently.
It reminds me a little bit of like Thanksgiving has always been a big celebration in my family. And my grandmother had 4 children, and then they all had a bunch of kids, and then they all had a bunch of kids. And so we would go to my grandmother's house. She lived to be 100. And so like well into my adulthood, we would all go to her house, and there would be like 50 people for Thanksgiving dinner. And then when we moved out here, and especially since my grandmother died a few years ago, oftentimes my little 4-person family just has Thanksgiving by ourselves. And it's a lovely like little thing, but I feel it as it's not that big celebratory gathering. And so that's how I kind of relate to this text is like Hannah's getting what, she's getting food on this for the celebration, but it feels kind of pale in comparison to what is possible or what her memory might be of her own childhood or something like that.
Yeah.
Amy, the Hebrew in this verse is weird.
It's weird, yes.
It's something like he would give to her a portion of 2 nostrils. A paim is a dual that like most literally means 2 nostrils. It can mean face. And so I think when our translations are reading it as a one face portion, like there's only one face in this family, Hannah's only got one face to feed, and so she gets one portion. Some people read this as they read that dual as he gives her a double portion because he loves her. And that sounds very different.
Yes, it does.
So for instance, the NRSV reads, to Hannah, he gave a double portion because he loved her, though the Lord had closed her womb. So I have 2 questions, and you can answer either one of them or both of them. One of them is, how do you make sense of the Hebrew? The other is, if you read it the way the NRSV does, he gave her a double portion because he loved her. How does that change does it change your sense of what's happening here?
I mean, honestly, I don't feel like I can say anything smarter about the Hebrew than the various translations we've read. I don't have a good solution. I don't know what that should be.
Yeah.
I think if I read it as her husband gave her a double portion, I think it feels a little bit to me, we're going to go on to soon to him saying to her, like, but isn't my love enough for you?
Yeah.
Which, like, no, actually, no.
Yeah.
But this is sort of another, like, it is sweet that he is trying.
Yeah.
But this is not what she wants.
Yeah.
You can't make up for the fact that I don't have children by giving me another chicken wing. Like that's not gonna do it. So it's I guess it feels poignant, like he's trying, and also there's nothing it emphasizes that there's nothing he can do.
Yeah. So it's his best effort, but it is
But you can't do anything. It emphasizes the powerlessness of the people in the story to change this situation.
Yeah. The other way of reading it is if you read that as a double portion and you go back to what you were talking about love unequally distributed.
Yes.
It starts to sound a little more like that story in which Jacob gave a special coat to the one son. It does. And now Elkanah is giving double portion to the one wife. It sort of amplifies that. Like you can both understand why Hannah does not receive this as sufficient, and also why Peninnah maybe would be upset if there's special treatment happening here.
Yes, you're right. And the mention of the fact that Peninnah taunts her comes right after this verse.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So if we imagine that she did get a double portion, then that really underscores that possible reading.
Yeah. And in the CEB, it's Peninnah made fun of her just to bother her, just because she knows she can get under her skin, which makes some sense of that.
Yeah. You
were talking about this verse 8, in which Elkanah says, "Why are you crying? Aren't I worth more to you than 10 sons?"
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, sweet Elkanah, I think he's trying.
Yeah.
As you were saying, he does not understand the depth of what is happening here. Can you just talk to me a little bit about how you understand what Hannah's experience might be here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will speak to what I think you mean, and then you can flesh it out in all the other ways. I know we've talked about this before because it's just such a common theme across the text of the Hebrew Bible, of the biblical text, I would say, broadly speaking, that there is in this time period, in this culture, in this sort of worldview, there's really a sense that a woman's place in society is so dependent on her having offspring. And it doesn't necessarily mean, it does mean she's more vulnerable in society if she doesn't. And I think the fact that it keeps underscoring, but her husband loved her, as that's not a given.
Right.
If a woman is barren, she could be rejected by her husband.
Absolutely.
And then really be outside social norms. But even beyond that sort of, you have a place to live and you have a person who is providing for your basic care, there's just a sense that you're I don't know, the thing that tethers you to the rest of the world is your children. And if you don't have that, I think at that time, it feels strange to talk about as a modern person, because I know some modern folks have this feeling and some modern folks do not. Right. And I want to sort of raise up and honor both of those things. But in the context of this story, this is the purpose of life. And if you can't do this, you can't just say oh, well, Elkanah already has children through another wife. Right. So they're sort of having different experiences. Right. And he wants her to just be fine. But I think that's an unreasonable expectation.
That was really beautiful. Well, the way you were talking about it was reminding me of a conversation that we had a few weeks ago about Genesis 15, in which Avram is having the same issue. But it feels different when it's Hannah. When it feels different when talking about it two ways. One is that it's the woman, and the other is that the man in this story has his offspring, as you were saying. And so he has different stakes in this conversation than Avram did back then. In that conversation, we were trying to expand a little bit beyond. So we said, yes, in the ancient world, offspring. Then we tried to think about it in terms of legacy and something like that. I'm just wondering, you were mentioning women in the modern world who may not have the same desire or experience the same expectation. Do you have any thoughts about how to get into, is there a parallel about the kind of thing that maybe Hannah's feeling if you don't assume that worldview?
If you don't assume that worldview. I don't have a specific, a one thing to point to that I would say this will be true of everybody. But I have experienced in my own life, only on a few occasions, a real awareness, I don't know, like an overwhelming want for something that I genuinely had no power to bring about. I'm pretty used to being able to work hard for the thing I want, or plan carefully, or do that,
Yeah.
And there are many, many areas of life where a person can do that, but there are other areas of life where you cannot. And I think this is like a parade example of one.
Yeah.
Like if your body is not making babies, your body's not making babies. It's very,
Yeah.
it is a very powerless feeling. But it could be like prayers for your own health, ways in which your body is not doing what you desperately want it to do. It could be prayers for other people. I mean, I don't know. I hesitate to mention specific things, but
Sure.
I feel like this is just like an exquisite example of things that are fundamentally out of our control.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is John Weicker, and I am the Associate Pastor for Youth and Their Families at First Presbyterian Church of Durham, North Carolina. I am a Bible Worm supporter at the Bible Worm supporter level, $48 per year. And I do that not because we're on the narrative lectionary or even because I preach that often, although when I do preach and the texts line up, I certainly use the podcast. I actually use Bible Worm as my own personal devotion for the week. I'm someone who misses the deep theology and close reading of texts that I got to do a lot of in seminary. And in Bobby and Amy's work, I found that again. And so I listen on Monday mornings on my way over to church, and then Monday afternoons on the way back, as a way to prepare for the week, to do ministry, and to love Jesus and serve. I hope you'll join me in becoming a Bible Worm supporter too. And now back to this week's episode.
All right, so I'll pick up in verse 9. One time, after eating and drinking in Shiloh, Hannah got up and presented herself before the Lord. Now Eli the priest was sitting in the chair by the doorpost of the Lord's temple. Hannah was very upset and couldn't stop crying as she prayed to the Lord. Then she made this promise: Lord of heavenly forces, just look at your servant's pain and remember me. Don't forget your servant. Give her a boy. Then I'll give him to the Lord for his entire life. No razor will ever touch his head. As she kept praying before the Lord, Eli watched her mouth. Now Hannah was praying in her heart. Her lips were moving, but her voice was silent, so Eli thought she was drunk. How long will you act like a drunk? Sober up, Eli told her. No, sir, Hannah replied. I'm just a very sad woman. I haven't had any wine or beer, but have been pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think your servant is some good-for-nothing woman. This whole time I've spent praying out of my great worry and trouble. Eli responded, Then go in peace, and may the God of Israel give you what you have asked from him. Please think well of me, your servant, Hannah said. Then the woman went on her way, ate some food, and wasn't sad any longer. They got up early the next morning and worshipped the Lord. Then they went back home to Ramah. Elkanah had sex with his wife Hannah, and the Lord remembered her. So in the course of time, Hannah conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, which means I asked the Lord for him. So I really want to talk about Eli, but maybe we should start talking about Hannah because this part is really about her. This image that we get of her is, it's pretty intense. Like seems like she's been at dinner. She's gotten up. She's gone into the sanctuary and is praying in this kind of deep, passionate, yet silent kind of way. I'm curious what you think about her prayer or her promise. It's pretty forward.
Yeah.
Look at me, remember me, give me a boy, basically.
Yeah.
I'm just so interested in it's just, your word is always, what is it? Chutzpahdik? Like, I don't know, this feels, can you talk a little bit about how you understand Hannah here?
Yeah. I feel like my whole My understanding or my relationship to her prayer is really colored by verse 10 in my translation says, in her wretchedness, she prayed to the Lord. Like, I just have this sense of her as like, I don't think there's a better word than wretchedness, but that the translation is sort of like the bitterness of her soul.
Yeah.
Like, she is as distraught as a person can be.
Yeah.
And she brings that to prayer.
Yeah.
And part of me just wants to pause there for a minute because I think maybe sometimes people get the idea that that's not the kind of thing that we ought to bring to prayer, or we should like pull it together first.
Yeah.
Or figure out a less chutzpahdik thing to ask for.
Yeah.
Or, make sure your prayer starts with thanks and then, end with the positive, start with the make a little sandwich thing. Like that it should be, that the prayer should be some other kind of thing. And I just feel like she is so torn apart at this point that she like pours out what she's got. And what she's got is this overwhelming want for this one thing. Now, what do I think about the fact that she just asks for a specific thing? Like, I don't necessarily have a theology that like that's the way prayer works and you can just ask for a thing and maybe God will give it to you. And, I don't really think that's how it works. And at the moments in my life where I have felt really torn apart with something that I want so badly and I can't bring about myself, that is the prayer in my heart. And I usually hold myself back from saying it because I'm like, that's not what prayer is supposed to be.
Right.
So, I mean, I kind of want to applaud for her for just not holding it back. Like, God will do what God will do with the prayer. But if you are saying the thing that is true for you, I mean, that's what she does. Like, she just lays it all out there.
Yeah.
So I feel both ways about it. Like, I don't really think this is what prayer is like, quote unquote, supposed to look like, but also kudos to Hannah for just bringing her wretched self and saying, this is the only thing on my heart. This is the only thing.
That's beautiful. I appreciate your drawing out that translation, wretchedness. The CEB had very upset, which doesn't quite get like, you're really talking about like it's a state and it's her, like it's affected her whole being. So I think that's really important to get that nuance. You're saying that this may not be the way prayer works, and I get what you mean, right? This is not my tradition. You're very polite when you pray, and you say, "Not my will, but yours," and the little sandwich is exactly right. Like some adoration at the beginning, and some adoration at the end. And a little supplication sandwich. But in the biblical text, like if you're thinking about the lament psalms, this is exactly how you pray often. And it's very direct. And she is asking for a son, but she doesn't actually ask. It's imperatives, right? Look at me, remember me, or look at your servant, remember your servant, give her a boy. She's telling God very directly what she thinks God should do. So I just say all of that to say there is a model for biblical prayer that works exactly like that. And what she actually has the chutzpah to do it, and maybe so should we. I do take your point that, when you take Hannah as a model and she says what she needs and then she gets what she asks for or demands, then that runs us into all sorts of theological
problems. All kinds of problems,
But nonetheless, the direct speech and the claiming and naming what is going on in the presence of God, like it seems important that we should be able to do that, both as individuals and also as communities. The way she phrases it is, give me a boy and I'll give him to the Lord. So there's this mutual giving that's happening here. So it's different than just give him to me.
Yes.
So there's a reciprocity. Can you help me think about that, the importance or significance of that reciprocity?
I mean, I think, one question that I have about it that I think is something that maybe makes this wish for a child different from any other kind of wish that you might have is, what does it mean to like be so distraught to not have a child and feel like you just can't continue, and then offer to immediately give it up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what is it that she is really asking for?
Yeah.
It's not a simple thing.
Right.
To think about what it is, the sort of hole within her that she is hoping that she feels will be filled by having a child.
Yeah. I had not put that for myself quite like that. That's a really important question. It's not that she now has a child that she's going to raise to adulthood and then, be a member of their household. This is a child that she is going to, as soon as she weans him, she's going to give him away.
He's going to go he's going to go to the temple. And then she will be a mother. She will be a person with a connection to a child. She will be a person with a connection to the next generation and sort of peoplehood in that way. But she won't have, a child running around the house all the time to nurture and care for in the way that other people might.
Yeah, at Thanksgiving, she's still just going to have the one portion, right? Because the child will be off. But
it'll feel different.
This is reminding me, I had not made this connection till just now, but in that Exodus 12:13 that we were reading a couple of weeks ago, there's that one verse, the first verse of chapter 13, where God says the firstborn belongs to me.
Yes.
And that has sort of been a theme, and Abraham's willingness to almost sacrifice his own child in Genesis 22. Like, there does seem to be an expectation in these texts that one ought to be willing to give back to God what God has given to us.
Yes. And
here Hannah says it before God ever has to ask for it.
That's right.
So she gets something.
Yes, she understands that she wants this so desperately, but it's not the kind of thing that you just grasp your fists around and then you have it, that you have to offer it back.
Yeah. The line here about no razor will ever touch his head seems to be a reference to he'll be dedicated maybe as a Nazirite, like Samson was, a special category of devotee to God. Is there anything, I don't know that we need to say anything about that, but is there anything you wanted to say about that?
I think I probably would just say pretty much the same thing, that this,
it doesn't really inform this story particularly much.
Right.
So the priest, Eli, is watching this from the doorpost, and he gets all up in her face. Stop acting like a drunk. I'm just so interested in that response from him, that's where his head goes. Do you have thoughts about his response here, his initial response?
I think it's so I don't know, metaphorically nice or something like that he's sitting at the doorpost when this is happening, because we have this phrase that we use, at least in my Jewish community, which is our role as spiritual leaders is not to gatekeep. We are not trying to sit at the doorway and tell people they can't come in. Even though there are ways in which you feel like we have to hold certain standards and you have to do things in the expected way, that we always must be mindful that if we start feeling like our role is to keep people out, we've crossed over to a bad place. I mean, prayer at that time, my best understanding of it was what Hannah is doing, which is sort of maybe whispering or murmuring or something like that in some kind of wretched state by herself after there's been some kind of big celebratory meal. Although it seems that she did not eat of the meal. It's, she's behaving strangely.
Yes.
And so Eli does not give her the benefit of the doubt there and just sort of puts the things together. You're behaving strangely. This is not how we pray. And we're sitting at a big festive meal. So you must be drunk.
Yeah.
What I think is so amazing is that she doesn't I feel like the responses I would expect are to respond in anger, that Hannah could respond in anger, or that Hannah could say, I'm sorry, you're right. I shouldn't be praying in this way. I should pray in the expected fashion.
Yeah.
And she doesn't do either of those things. She says, that's not what I'm doing. This is what's happening. And Eli says, okay.
Yeah.
Like this, I don't love that this is how Eli, this is how religious official responded to this woman in a deep state of prayer and distress. But they navigated it pretty well after that.
Yeah, I hadn't not seen it quite that way. Like, I'm a little judgy about Eli. I mean, and he just kind of deserves it at the beginning. But like, I think of all the times in my context where I see people are acting strangely at Canvas Community kind of a lot, but you kind of notice when you think people are under the influence, and we want to be kind of careful about that. And I totally get how he made that assumption and wanted to gatekeep, even in our place, which is, mostly homeless folks. You still have to keep those gates. But he pivots nicely. You're exactly right. She states her truth, and he pivots nicely. So I wish he had been able to get there, approach her differently initially, but I do appreciate that he's able to make the transition when he hears the real story. What he says to her in verse 17, I don't know if this really matters, but he says, go in peace. And then he says, in the CEB, may the God of Israel give you what you've asked from him. Is the JPS the same? May he give? May God give?
Yes. May the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him.
The Hebrew could also be read, the God of Israel will give you what you've asked from him. And I have never been sure whether to read Eli here as just giving a blessing or whether he is sort of stating a fulfillment. I don't know if it matters. Do you have one? Do you think it matters?
Well, it matters for how I want to read the next verse. But
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just go ahead. So the next verse is Hannah says, please think well of me. And then she goes away and she's not sad anymore. That one?
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's a way to get into it. Like, how do you read that verse?
I mean, the way that I want to understand this verse, and again, this sort of helps me in my own self reconcile that tension I feel about asking for such a specific thing in prayer. And then the fact that it happens, which is wonderful in the story, but does not always happen in the world that I live in, that after she prays and like really pours herself out into this prayer, she feels better before anything has changed.
Yes.
Like then she can eat.
Yes.
And then, her sadness lifts some. And so I at least want to be able to pause before her wish is granted and talk about like the role of prayer in the human life. And also, then we can also talk about the fulfillment of it, which of course we will, but that I think sometimes if we can let ourselves pray so fully and honestly, it might not give us exactly the thing that we want. Maybe it will, but it matters that we can do it.
Right.
It helps us be in what is real right now.
Yes.
Because nothing has changed for her when she feels better in this verse.
It's interesting when you read it. So if you read it from Hannah's perspective, I agree with you. I want him to have said, may God give you what you've asked from. And then she trusts God, having no evidence whatsoever, and she feels better. I really like that reading a lot. When I think from the Eli's perspective, like when I think as a pastor, I think about the power of saying, God will bless you, rather than may God bless you. But I don't know if I actually, as a pastor, have the power to say that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it rings really differently to reassure people that God is a God of blessing, rather than to sort of hope that God will be a God of blessing.
Yes.
But it's the sort of same thing you were saying about having the chutzpah to pray what she prayed. Like there's a lot of chutzpah in saying, God's going to do this thing for you. And I feel like maybe that's something I don't feel comfortable doing.
Yeah, but there is real powerful. It is chutzpah. It is. Maybe for the good. I don't know.
So after this long kind of build up, then we just get like the very end of this is just like, yeah, they had sex and then there's a baby. Like, it's
I can't believe your translation has the word sex in it. Oh my God. Elkanah knew his wife, okay? That's all I can handle. He knew his wife.
Yeah. So, yes. So sometimes there's birds and bees.
It's magic. The stork.
So then the stork came and there was a baby. I don't know. It's just like it happened so fast and so easy. And so like, I don't know, like, I guess, like, I don't know how else you tell that story really. But even like the Abraham and Sarah story, like it takes like 3 chapters and there's all this drama. And then now here we are.
Yeah.
So I don't know. This always just feels a little quick and easy to me. And I think you've been talking about things don't always seem to go this way. And so the easiness of this makes me anxious theologically about how do I talk about this text to people for whom this is not how it goes.
Yes, it should.
All right, Amy. So that brings us to today's narrative lectionary reading.
The long introduction.
Which is chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. And I'm just going to read this as one unit, and then we'll talk about what we see going on in this prayer. I think the story is so much more interesting to me, but anyway. I'm in chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. So this is her prayer after she has had the child. My heart rejoices in the Lord. My strength rises up in the Lord. My mouth mocks my enemies because I rejoice in your deliverance. No one is holy like the Lord. No one except you. There is no rock like our God. Don't go on and on talking so proudly, spouting arrogance from your mouth, because the Lord is the God who knows, and he weighs every act. The bows of mighty warriors are shattered, but those who were stumbling now dress themselves in power. Those who were filled full now sell themselves for bread, but the ones who were starving are now fat from food. The woman who was barren has birthed 7 children, but the mother with many sons has lost them all. The Lord, he brings death, gives life, takes down to the grave, and raises up. The Lord, he makes poor, gives wealth, brings low, but also lifts up high. God raises the poor from the dust, lifts up the needy from the garbage pile. God sits them with officials, gives them the seat of honor. The pillars of the earth belong to the Lord. He set the world on top of them. God guards the feet of his faithful ones, but the wicked die in darkness, because no one succeeds by strength alone. The Lord, his enemies are terrified. God thunders against them from heaven. The Lord, he judges the far corners of the earth. May God give strength to his king and raise high the strength of his anointed one.
There's no baby in this poem.
There's 7 babies in this poem.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there's that. There.
But I think your point is an interesting one, that this is not necessarily the prayer you would expect. Someone who has been sort of strained and wretched over not being able to have a child. This is not exactly the prayer you might expect her to pray. Is that where you were sort of headed?
Yeah, the overall themes and types of examples that she gives in here are different.
They are, very much so.
Yeah.
There is a scholarly argument, I don't know how useful it is for us, but that this was a hymn that originally existed independently of this story. And so that it has been incorporated here. But I kind of like to think of it, I'm a narrative scholar mostly.
Yeah.
And so I like to think about, okay, well, this is Hannah's prayer that Hannah has prayed.
Yes, this is the text that we have.
You were talking about themes and whether or not they fit the situation. But I'm just curious, when you pull out themes from this text, what do you see?
Well, one of the big themes that I see is the theme of, I guess, sort of like inversion, or just because things are a certain way right now does not mean they're going to stay that way. It can turn on a dime.
Yes.
At God's will.
Yes.
For better and for worse. It's not just that the barren will have children. It's also that the woman of many could lose all of them.
Yes.
Which is interesting to think about that in the context of the introductory remarks I was making, that like people feel a different kind of stability in the land than they felt in the desert. And this feels to me like a reminder that nothing is permanent. Nothing is that stable. Everything can change for better and for worse.
I really like that reading of it, Amy. You know, I'm enough of a liberation theologian that I read these down in verse 5, those who were filled full now sell themselves for bread, but the ones who were starving are now fat from food. Mm-hmm. I read that as inversion, as you're talking about. God has lifted up the hungry in the same way, I guess, that God has responded to Hannah in her wretchedness. Like you took it one step past where I want to go, which is like, and then it could like undo itself, right? I just want this to be an inversion one, which is there. But your further point about things can change at any time. And there might also be a warning here, I guess, about if you are somebody who has been elevated, like now that you're elevated, be careful about how you inhabit that elevation, because God can undo. The other theme that I see here related clearly is that God is in charge.
Yes.
Right. So the Lord, here's all the things God does: gives death, brings to the grave, raises up, gives life. Like everything depends on God.
Yes.
And I wonder, I was thinking back to your introduction and that the book of Judges and that line about there was no king in Israel and the people did what was right in their own eyes. Like if you read it in that context, then Hannah is speaking in a society that has kind of lost track of God as God. And they sort of think they can do what they want.
Yeah.
And here is a reminder that no, in fact, you're kidding yourself, and that God is the God of all things. God is the God of history. Which, I mean, when you take that with what you are talking about, then says, and God works for the uplift of the poor and the wretched. But you can take those 2 points kind of, they're not separate points, but they're different points. The other thing that's going on in here that I don't love is, I mean, Hannah's got a little bit of an attitude. Maybe she deserves it. I don't know. Verse 1, my mouth mocks my enemies because I rejoice in your deliverance, like God's deliverance. Or the woman who has birthed 7 children, but the mother with many sons has lost them all. Like there's a couple lines in here.
That kind of Schadenfreude.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you do with that?
I mean, okay, I can, if I sort of like, tilt my head a little bit and work kind of hard, I can try to make it all work through the sense of like her abiding faith in God, and that that's really at the center of things. It does, on the face of it, feel a little bit like if you're starting something out saying, I gloat over my enemies, like it seems like the end of your poem there would have you coming back down again. Like it seems like we should be striving not to do that. Even in moments of deliverance and whatnot. Yeah, I mean, I can try to make it work better for my mind by making the enemies more like sort of ideas and values and distractions that are harmful to me that I somehow gain mastery over, but that doesn't seem to be exactly what she's saying here. Yeah, I was in my head sort of comparing this to the end of the Joseph story that we read a couple times ago, in which at the end, Joseph seems to have this kind of, at least I read him as sort of a magnanimous response to his brothers and to say like, it's okay, like you did this thing. And I kind of was hoping Hannah might land somewhere like that. But then I was thinking, like Hannah is speaking here as someone who was, in the translation you were reading, she's one of the wretched. And maybe it's enough for someone who is coming from that position to say God is a God who inverts things. And maybe we don't need to expect them to be nice about it. I think that's fair.
Especially right away. Like this is, the next sort of chapter.
Right. To just be able to say, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe it worked. Like, I can't believe she was in this wretched state and poured out this prayer and things have changed. Just, that, I think it is a reasonable human response, even if it's maybe not a model for what we want to be doing.
Yeah. So I'll just remind us briefly that this prayer seems to serve as a kind of model for Mary's prayer when the angel announces the birth of Jesus in Luke chapter 1. And so we'll come back to that later this year and look at that. But some of these same themes of inversion and people being pulled down, those kinds of things show up there as well. So Amy, we've spent a lot of time with 1 Samuel chapter 1. A little time with a little time with 1 Samuel chapter 2. Yeah. When you're thinking about this text and where it intersects with our world today, what do you want to pull out from it?
Bobby, in the Jewish tradition, Hannah's prayer becomes the model of what prayer is supposed to be. Like, very specifically, like, it's supposed to be like, you're supposed to move your mouth to form the words, but not really say them aloud. And you're not supposed to be drunk, just to be clear.
Yeah.
And I think that, and I think I've told our listeners before that I had some miscarriages. I didn't have the easiest time having children, and I had some losses. And I, for a long time, really sort of connected to the wretchedness of Hannah. And I think the model that she offers of just bringing exactly the hot mess that is in your heart to God in an unedited format that is not what it should be or what it has no, you can have whatever theological beliefs you have, and they could, whatever, it can hold all the tensions, it can hold you don't have to make sense of your own prayers.
Yes.
You can just offer them.
That's beautiful.
And it makes a difference. It makes a difference for you. It makes a difference for Hannah. And in some ways, I really wish there were more distance between her prayer and the, quote unquote success of it, the birth of the son, because it's really easy to skip over that. But I think her prayer as authentic prayer for me is a really important model.
I love that, Amy. That's so beautiful. The sort of corollary to that in this text theologically is that this text and the Psalms really depict a God who is attentive to those kinds of prayers, maybe especially attentive to those kinds of prayers that are made out of the wretchedness of one's own life. The other thing that's striking me in this text, I love that you're reading and relating yourself to Hannah and her experience. When I read this, I'm a little bit relating myself to Elkanah and Eli, neither one of whom gets it. Elkanah's heart is in the right place, Am I not enough for you? I love you. But he doesn't hear what's really happening. And Eli also has that same kind of response, what's wrong with you? And then he does at least pivot when he hears what she says. And so it's the way I'm putting it together is Hannah is able to speak before God in this text, and God is able to hear it in a way that she's not able to speak to the men in this text and be heard. And so I just sort of where I'm landing with that, I think, is to try to remind myself, just as a human person, that I don't know what is going on with the people in my life, the ones that are close to me and the ones who just wandered through the door of my sanctuary. And instead of assuming that I do know what's going on, to invite people to speak their truth to me in whatever way they are willing and able to speak it to me and receive that for what it is. It's a helpful reminder to me of lots of people are experiencing the wretchedness of life in one way or another. Yeah. And so to be somebody who can hear and receive that seems like an important message. Yeah, who can witness that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful, Bobby. That's really beautiful.
All right, Amy. So next week we will be over in 2 Samuel. chapter 7, verses 1 to 17, which Walter Brueggemann says is the most important chapter in all of the Hebrew scripture.
Wow.
It's a big claim.
That's a big claim. I look
I
forward
might
to
have
it.
made it slightly bigger than he makes it. I don't know.
That's okay.
Walter's not known for like making small claims, though. It's the story of David receiving a covenant from God.
That's it. That's big. That's a big plot
That's big.
point. Yeah,
It's a big one.
I'll agree.
All right.
Good.
Thanks for this conversation, Amy. I will see you next time.
I'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Bible Worm. If you've enjoyed this free podcast, we hope you'll help us keep it going by joining our Patreon for as little as $4 per month. You can also sign up for other goodies like early access, video lectures, weekly liturgies, and more. Visit patreon.com/BibleWormPodcast for details.
Bible Worm is produced and edited by Bobby Williamson. Our theme song is sung by Colin Bagby, and our theme music is The World at Large by Dano Songs. Many thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping make this podcast possible.
Join us again next time when we'll discuss God's eternal covenant with David, as told in 2 Samuel 7, 1 to 17. Until then, keep on digging.